Bit of a different video this time. This is me, Luke, Kirsty's boyfriend, putting forward my opinions, there's 5 of them, on why books may not be the best medium for telling a story in 2017 and beyond, and even a couple of years before as well. All views expressed are my own, but Kirsty has given the say-so on this video. It's not shot in the best quality, this is just me on my laptop using the webcam, throwing it together in Final Cut and sticking it out there. Because YouTube is not what I do, it's not my background, but we thought it'd be interesting to give a different take on books, and particularly why they may not be the best. So there's not many channels doing too much of that, and particularly from the perspective of someone who doesn't particularly like modern fiction. So let me know your thoughts, leave comments, and here we go. The first reason I think that books may not be the best medium for storytelling compared to modern equivalents of relaying a narrative is simply that they're, for one thing, less spectacular than, say, a series or a film or a game. And what I mean by that is effects these days are such at the point that they can really embellish what's going on. It's one thing being able to see things in your own head and interpret them yourself, and that's obviously what a lot of people like about the book, is that you're not spoon-fed what you're being told or what you see. You actually create that yourself. But I think to a degree you still do that with the film. You obviously see all the effects, you see the characters, you see the clothes, you see the settings, and you still interpret those in your own head despite obviously being made to see what they actually look like. But that's more lifelike anyway. Obviously you walk into a house and what you see is what you see. How you interpret it is completely down to you. Another reason that in particular TV series can be better than books as a medium for storytelling is that they're a lot longer. A longer series, particularly ones like Prison Break that have 20+ episodes per series, you've got a lot more time there for character development, plot development, and just more detail than a book, but particularly a film, can also go into. A lot of the times this extends to secondary characters, so like Bilquis in American Gods in the book doesn't have too much involvement in the plot. She's kind of mentioned, then that's it. Whereas in the series they've actually said she's going to get her own storyline. A lot of the time it is driven by reader feedback in these cases where the book gets made or adapted into a different medium. But on this case Neil Gaiman is on the directing team, and maybe it was his decision to give her more of a visual element than what could be given in the book, which again ties into the fact that maybe because they've got so many effects and things at their disposal, they can do things that really embellish that character that would have been struggled to have been portrayed in a book in the reader's mind. The third reason, and the biggest for me personally, is soundtracks. This extends to anything from a TV show to a film or a game. I've not long actually just played through Life is Strange again for the second time, just ready for the prequel to come out at the end of this month, and it reminded me just how important a soundtrack can be. A book just can't replicate it. There's nothing you can put in the head. I mean, yes, you can say that in this setting, when you're setting up the scene, that this song is playing, but that's quickly forgotten by the reader when all this other information comes in they then have to process, and it's very difficult to use that to embellish an atmosphere. In this one particular section of the game, without too many spoilers if you haven't played it, there's effectively it's towards the close of the game and it looks as though there's going to be an apocalypse coming. There's all the signs outside of that happening, all the pathetic fallacy. There's also a party that's going on that's themed on the apocalypse. The imagery inside is one thing, and it's beautifully conveyed in the animation, but also the soundtrack that's used throughout that whole section really epitomises that feel. It's sort of hedonistic and destructive, and whatever they've picked really sorts that out. Same with, as I was looking at my notes here, Trainspotting, which was obviously very set in the very 90s, and particularly with drugs and things that were going around at the time. You look at the soundtrack and it is held up. It's alongside the film as something that goes with it. Yeah, it's something that's held up equally as much as the film, so you can actually get the soundtrack and they'll say, oh, it's a great compilation of tracks in its own right, but the way it embellishes the story or the feeling or the character that's on screen, because a lot of characters do have their own themes as well in films, and games as well to a lesser degree. It just goes on to embellish the story, and it's just something the book can't hope to achieve. Mad Max had an incredible, the Fury Road, the second one, had a great soundtrack featuring some awesome artists on there, and it just all served to tell a better story, and it can also stand up well in spite of the narrative as well. Keeping on the subject of games in particular for this one, interactivity is another reason, and it's a big part in immersion in the plot as well. So, for example, with a horror game, you have to play it. You can't really skip the scary bits, or bits you don't necessarily want to look at, unless perhaps you've got a friend playing and you can go, oh no, you play, I'm scared, which happens all the time with me. I downloaded Resident Evil 1, the HD remake, and I have not touched it because Kirsty will just laugh with all the screaming and crying and hiding that I will do. So yeah, there's that is an element in itself. In a book or a film, you can either skip that bit in the book, or you can skip that chapter on the DVD, or you can just cover your eyes. You can't do that in the game. You have to be a part of it, and it really helps serve the immersion of the plot. Also, the imagery, again, going back to how spectacular things can be in terms of effects and the visual side of things. Some monsters that you can see that are portrayed in books, or aliens in particular, seeing those done, especially with modern effects, things like Stranger Things on Netflix, or sort of the Resident Evil series, not great films, but the animation's on point. It sets it up in your mind. It can add another degree to the horror. I think that's a particular genre that does benefit from this interactive nature. So another quick scan of my notes. Oh yeah, jump scares as well. I hate them, and they're a very cheap way of basically flogging a horror game. But they are important. Game in particular, Dead Space, did this. Also, the first Resident Evil, where things just burst out at you. It can't really happen in a book to the same degree. You are detached from that experience to be fully involved and to get things jump out. And particularly in things like virtual reality, which is starting to become a thing, it really can take that narrative to the next level. The only thing I will say is, though, if it's used too judiciously, it will end up where you run the risk of the narrative taking a backseat to simply a scare factor. So it's obviously important as a creative decision to make sure the story is the forefront and the horror serves the narrative, not the other way around, not just have it for the horror's sake. The final point, and this may be somewhat contentious and debatable, particularly with this sort of community, is that by nature, games and a film can be a shared experience. If you're watching a film, chances are you've got mates with you and you're going to enjoy it together, you're going to talk about it during as well as after. Me and Kirsty in particular do quite often go to movie nights with friends, go to the cinema, and it's a communal experience. By default, a book isn't. You have to read it in isolation. I know Kirsty does these buddy reading things, and obviously you do have the debate and discussion afterwards, as you do with anything. But you can't really sit there sharing one book with a friend and going, okay, turn the page, okay, turn the page. It's something you have to enjoy by yourself and then talk about after. Whereas a game, obviously, you've got things like 2-player, you've got online play, you've got co-op where you can play together. Or you can play it by yourself, you've got the choice. And these days, really, multiplayer seems to be the default, which I'm personally not into. I do like playing by myself, and having the storyline element. It's basically what I play for rather than a competitive nature. The exception to that, of course, is children's books, where it's something that a parent does with a child, will read the book, bond over it, all the rest of it, or if you're in school, and a teacher will read to the class. Obviously there's that element to it, but that's someone relaying it to you. It's not something that you're both a part of. It's fundamentally two different experiences. In a sense, it is quite a debatable one, that one, but it still stands as a point. I feel it's something that you can't really enjoy 100% in sync with someone else. Just a final point to make. I don't hate books. This has just been sort of half tongue-in-cheek debate. I know obviously Kirsty's channel is all about reading. Well, I thought it would be interesting to see if I had to take over from the perspective of someone who's not massively well into books, and offered up a different perspective for debate. I will reply to comments using my own account as myself, so there's no sort of thing where people think Kirsty's gone a bit mental and now hates books and is using me as a mouthpiece for that. My reading background is basically these. So biographies, real books, but real things that happened. Love this guy. Sad that he's dead. Very talented, and this is very nice. It's very portable. It's got lots of pictures. I don't know if I'm allowed to show these, but it's not my channel, so who cares? They're like pictures and things you can look at. Also, The only benefit a book really has over, well, it's not really a benefit since you can, it's something physical. I like things that are tactile and you can touch and obviously feel and know, and they're great. Another one, Kirsty got me this one last Christmas, as you can see, signed by the author. Incredible dude. Look at that, signed it. Yeah, big fan. So there are some benefits. As I say, mostly I tend to read non-fiction books. I've got piles of them. Magazines, again, piles of those on my iPad, because I think they tend to suit being stored electronically, so they're always there for reference. My reading background was basically watching Matilda as a very young child, getting well into books, and it did help with learning to sort of read and things like that. Because I didn't speak for the first 3 years of my life, and I think it sort of helped seeing how sort of the power words can have and things like that. I just find modern fiction quite cliched. I appreciate in this video I've probably not been particularly charismatic or perhaps having the same quality or skill as Kirsty does. I don't really do this very often. She knows my feeling on YouTube. And this is just very quick and dirty. There's no real prep other than something I lazily wrote this morning. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, as Kirsty would say, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because that helps her, and then I'm a good boyfriend for doing that. I've brought her to things. I might do one, if this is successful, based on how books are superior, but from the perspective of someone who's not that into books. So it's, obviously Kirsty could do another video and say 5 videos why Luke's an idiot, and these are all stupid points. But coming from me, it's obviously someone who's got a more balanced view in that regard, maybe, of why they're not superior, but doing a video on why they are superior. So it might seem disingenuous, but I think there's possibly something in there. Again, if it's something you want to see, just let me know, and I will be replying, as I say, as myself, as and when they come in, as and when I can be bothered to go on YouTube. Laters.